In an age of utter chaos, armies clashed in battles that seemed to have no end. In this world of martial arts, strength was the only law, the absolute truth. The weak were mercilessly crushed beneath the boots of the strong. And at the very top, there was a legend who conquered the world with his unmatched military power. His name was Guan Huan, a figure who was the very embodiment of brute force and war. Before him, a general calls him Asura, asking if he's only come to throw his life away. The commander declares that Guan Huan can't possibly stop an army of 100,000 men all by himself. Our MC turns his back and repeats the question about the troop size with a sneer. With a look of pure contempt, he wonders what a number like that even means. He glares at the general and says that because the enemy hides behind numbers, they could never beat him. The troop leader flies into a rage at Guan Huan's audacity, calling him a brazen punk. With that, the general gives the order for his soldiers to advance and finish the opponent. Even alone and unarmed, the power radiating from our MC was on a whole other level. With a single motion, he unleashes a devastating wave of energy that wipes out everything around him. His strength was so absurd that the battlefield itself was obliterated. He truly was the strongest. Even the great masters who dominated the era fell one by one before his overwhelming power. With this, he finally united the land under a single flag, founding the Shura Kingdom. The capital of this new kingdom was Muol, a prosperous city built on his conquest. Far from the capital, on a desolate mountain, a strange blue light shone under the moon. There, Guan Huan meets a woman who congratulates him on his great victory. She kneels and says that with the unification of the Central Plains, there's nothing left to fear. Losing his patience, our MC tells Mayowol to get straight to the point and explain why she summoned him. To place, Mayowol reminds him that he was the only one in history to unify everything with military might alone. She goes on, saying that even the title God of War was no longer enough for him. Because of this, Mayowol reveals she called him there to gift him a secret manual. She presents an artifact, claiming that only Lord Asura could control such power. Intrigued, our MC reaches out to touch the so-called secret manual. The instant he touches the object, a red liquid leaps out, and chains burst from thin air. In a split second, the chains shoot out and wrap around Guan Huan, catching him completely off guard. The metal links tighten around his arms and legs, leaving him completely bound. Caught by surprise, our MC is floored by the betrayal that just unfolded. He tries to break free, but the magical chains hold him with supernatural strength. Tomwall reveals that his tyranny ends here, because from this day on, she would rule the kingdom. Guan Huan glares at her in silence as she advises him to accept his fate peacefully. In that moment, he calls her by name and asks if she's forgotten just who she's messing with. With a rising fury, he declares himself the mandate of heaven and the very embodiment of destruction. Sensing the danger, Mayowol screams for her allies to activate the Maganchian barrier. But it was too late. Guan Huan breaks free and lunges forward with a punch charged with pure energy. His strike is infused with a strange red energy. Guan Huan's face is covered by the bizarre liquid. He's frozen in mid-air, completely immobilized by the red substance. In the midst of the chaos, he wonders how this could be happening, unleashing even more power. He is consumed by the red energy. Mayowol watches as Guan Huan is completely engulfed by the energy. The traitors look on as Guan Huan is completely sealed away. Seeing that Guan Huan has been defeated, the traitors kneel and congratulate their new leader. With that, they hail Mayowol as the new and rightful queen of the Shura kingdom. And so, the life of Ashura, the king who ruled the heavens, came to a tragic and lonely end. Suddenly, a system window appears in the darkness, inviting someone to become a player. But instead of accepting the invitation, a pair of fists simply smashes the screen to bits. The scene shifts to a young man who looks confused, wondering what just happened. He feels a sinister presence as a small fairy flutters near his head. The little creature yells for Yuta to watch out as a draconic monster emerges from the shadows. Without wasting a second, our hero draws his sword and prepares for combat. He manages to dodge the creature's first attack, skillfully sliding backward. The beast begins to charge a fire attack, and the system announces it will take 2 seconds. Faced with the situation, Yuta realizes he has very little time to come up with a strategy. Right after, the monster fires a blast of flames with an insane amount of damage. As the flames engulf him, his strategy guide begins to analyze the skill. The analysis completes, and the guide activates a countermeasure, boosting his fire resistance. Protected by the skill, our hero emerges from the flames without a single scratch. Immediately, he charges forward, his sword glowing intensely, ready for the counterattack. Wielding his holy sword of Asterion, he calls down heaven's judgment upon the creature. With that, a pillar of light slams into the monster's head, which roars in pain from the impact. And just like that, the quest is completed, and the system announces the defeat of the floor 998 boss. Relieved, our MC takes a deep breath and admits that the battle was tougher than he expected. The little fairy notices his worried expression and asks if something is wrong. She cheerfully reminds him that only the top of the tower is left before they're finally done. The little fairy tells him to hurry up so they can finally see their beloved families again. Yuta agrees with a smile, but his expression shows that something is still bothering him a lot. He reflects that it's been 3 years since he was summoned, and now only the final challenge remains. Despite being so close to the goal, he can't help but wonder what awaits him. His little companion calls to him again, noticing he's completely lost in thought. He touches the large door and tells himself to pull it together. He can't falter now. As the doors swing open, he confirms he's okay and steps onto the tower's final floor. No matter what awaits, Yuta is confident that no monster can beat his stats, and he's going home. But the moment he enters the final room, the being that appears before his eyes is not what he expected. A demonic silhouette emerges from the flames with a terrifying smile and eyes that glow in the dark. When the figure reveals himself, he sees a man with long hair, and the young man is left completely speechless. The mysterious man asks who they are, leaving our hero even more confused by the situation. The little fairy is terrified while Yuta wonders what he's looking at, calling the guy some random old dude. He then looks around and questions if this man standing there is really the final boss of the tower. Meanwhile, Guanhuan wonders where in the world he is and realizes Manhwa really did imprison him here. Our hero is shocked to hear the man speak and concludes that he's an intelligent monster. He pulls himself together and draws his sword, determined not to let his guard down, since this is the final boss. And so Yuta charges forward with everything he's got, determined to end the fight right from the start. But to his surprise, Guanhuan blocks the attack with incredible ease, leaving Yuta stunned. The boy doesn't give up and continues his assault with the sword, but the man seems to be barely trying. Yuta's blade is easily deflected by his opponent's arm, who doesn't even move from his spot. With one last effort, our hero prepares a final blow, yelling that this is the end of the line. With his holy sword of Asterion, he unleashes heaven's judgment with all his might. With a smirk, he thinks the enemy is weaker than he looked, but the man just calls him a brat. To Yuta's astonishment, the man catches the sword's blade with his bare hand, effortlessly. Our hero can't believe his ultimate skill was stopped with just one hand. He realizes this really is the final boss, and his guide begins to analyze the opponent's weakness. The analysis finishes, and the system finds a weakness with a high probability of a successful attack. The man glares at the sword without showing any concern for the young man's strategy. With a single word of command, Yuta's system starts to display a critical error. Because of this, the guide's success rate plummets to less than a 1% chance. He panics, having never encountered an enemy so insanely powerful on his journey. With a demonic aura surrounding him, Yuta wonders what kind of being this old man before him is. Guanhuan, with a smirk, tells the boy not to be so scared of the current situation. He calmly states that he doesn't fight people who aren't worthy of his time and effort. Our hero is left speechless, wondering if he's really not worthy of a fight. To top it off, the man says that at Yuta's current level, even a single punch would be a waste. With a serious look, Guanhuan turns to the young man and asks him what this place is. From that point on, Yuta finally understands why his skills weren't working. He realizes that from the very beginning, the stage required him to prove his true strength. Only after proving his worth would he be able to deal any damage to his opponent. And so the young man braces himself and says he'll prove his strength, without a doubt. At that moment, a system window pops up, activating his chosen hero skill. For a limited time, all of his stats reach the maximum level the system allows. With that, Yuta rushes toward his adversary, ready to show off his power. A screen appears, showing that all his attributes have reached 999. Our MC looks at the window and questions those numbers for strength and agility. He can't believe Yuta dares to argue about power with such pathetic numbers. To Guan Huan, using a blue screen to measure someone's strength is just disgusting. Given the situation, he declares that he no longer cares about the purpose of this place. With his hand glowing, he moves to fix his opponent's twisted mindset. Seeing the enemy's murderous aura, Yuta screams as he readies his sword for the clash. Guan Huan charges forward, saying he'll first destroy that disgusting blue window. With a single blow, he lands a devastating attack on the boy's status screen. Our hero screams in pure desperation, unable to believe what's happening. With that, his status window shatters, and the system suffers severe damage. Yuta wonders how that's possible as a white light shoots out from the tower. Because of this, all his data is erased, and the system is permanently shut down. Guan Huan glares at him and asks if he finally understands that strength can't be measured. With a smirk, he says that this tiresome numbers game ends right here. Right after, Yuta collapses to the ground, completely defeated and powerless. His level returns to 1, and crying, he can only apologize for everything. The scene then flashes back to 3 years in the past, when he was first summoned to the tower. Our hero climbed the place with many companions, but only he survived. In a flashback, he asks his fairy if they'll really go back home. The boy says that the more he thinks about it, the stranger it all seems. The little fairy agrees that maybe they'll never be able to return to their world. He remembers a girl saying that their path had a greater meaning. Because of that, the little fairy cheers him up, affirming that his journey would also have a purpose. Back in the present, Guan Huan says the boy's numbers game ends right here. With that, our hero falls to the ground, completely defeated and powerless. His level returns to 1, and crying, he can only admit that he was wrong. Guan Huan approaches as Yuta fruitlessly tries to open his status window. Desperate, he tries to access his inventory and even the quest screen, but nothing works. The boy panics and yells for the system to reboot, in disbelief over what happened. Seeing this, the man calls him pathetic and asks if he's still trapped in that game. With a look of contempt, he states that those disgusting blue windows will never appear again. Terrified, our hero crawls backward and begs for his life to be spared. Guan Huan glares at him and repeats that he doesn't finish those who aren't worthy of fighting him. He then approaches the young man and questions him again about what this place is. With a smile, he asks what he needs to do to return to his original world. Yuta realizes the man is also a player and says he doesn't know how to go back home. Our hero explains that besides clearing the final stage, there's no real method. Confused by the terms, Guan Huan repeats the boy's words, not understanding a thing. Yuta wonders what kind of nonsense this is and if the man came from the Stone Age. Not knowing how to explain, he sits down and thinks of an easier way to communicate. Suddenly, the young man has an idea and says that to get out, he needs to clear the entire tower. The boy confirms that he needs to get through every single floor, from the first to the last. With a smirk, Yuta says that since he's also a player, he should start with the quests. Our MC gets the completely wrong idea and yells that he'll smash the tower to pieces. Terrified, the young man tries to explain that's not how you clear a tower of challenges. But it was too late. Guan Huan unleashes a wave of energy and starts destroying everything around him. With that, the entire tower begins to explode from the bottom up with insane power. Yuta is in complete shock. Unable to believe what the man was doing, he screams and asks why he's destroying the tower, as the system reports an error. Faced with the situation, the tower continues to crumble with explosions on all sides. Falling amidst the rubble, Yuta screams and wonders what kind of being this old man is. With a face full of terror, he wonders how it's possible to destroy a tower with your bare hands. In the middle of the fall, a girl appears and desperately screams Yuta's name. The boy is surprised to see that the one calling him was his companion, Nova. The girl manages to reach him and grabs him tightly so they won't be separated. She apologizes for being late and says she went to get his sword, which he had left behind. Right after, Nova warns that they need to get out of there because something really big is about to happen. Our hero is confused by the warning and wonders what this big event could be. He thinks that nothing could be worse than the current situation, as they are enveloped in a light. In that instant, an error appears on the system, warning that all tower data would be deleted. Seeing this, Yuta turns and is horrified to see a massive purple hole in the sky. He realizes that all the tower's debris is being sucked into that hole. Desperate, the boy says that if they get sucked in too, they'll be completely lost. On the other side, Guanhuan continues to unleash his power, not caring about the destruction. Suddenly, he stops and looks to the side as if he noticed something strange. He feels like he stepped on something and finds Yuta and Nova right in front of him. Guanhuan turns around, confused because even with the tower destroyed, nothing happened. He says he did exactly as Yuta told him and cleared the place completely. The boy screams that this isn't clearing the tower and that he's taking things way too far. Yuta warns him that if he keeps destroying everything, bad things might happen. Suddenly, a pillar of purple energy erupts from the ground, surprising the boy. Our MC stares at the light while Yuta is in shock from the released energy. Before them, a woman with white hair appears, and the man calls her an unwelcome guest. But upon getting a better look at her face, Guanhuan is left completely speechless. He screams Maya Wall's name upon realizing the woman there is the same one who betrayed him in the past. The woman looks at him with disdain and calls him a brat for destroying her tower. Hearing that, our MC's face fills with uncontrollable rage. With that, he charges straight at Maya Wall, screaming about her betrayal. Without showing any concern, the woman simply raises her hand to stop the attack. With a simple gesture, she unleashes a wave of power that sends him flying. Seeing the scene, Yuta screams desperately for the man, unable to believe the woman's power. Mayawol approaches and asks Guanhuan if he didn't hear her the first time. With a look of contempt, she repeats that she asked if he was the one who destroyed her tower. Yuta is in shock, realizing she defeated that monster with a single blow. He wonders if this could be the Eshua that Nova had mentioned earlier. Getting up, our MC digs his fingers into the earth and says he finally understands. He states that she is very different from the Mayawol he knew, as she uses a strange power. From this, the man concludes that she was the one responsible for building this darn tower. With a hateful smile, he accuses her of being the creator of this disgusting numbers game. Our MC screams that he did everything they asked, and cleared the place completely. He continues to complain about that darn tower and that disgusting status game too. Because of this, he lunges forward and demands that she send him back to his original kingdom. The woman stares at him with a mocking smile, unfazed by his threat. Right after, Mayawol starts laughing, finding the whole situation hilarious. She then asks who told him that ridiculous story about going back home. Seeing this, Yuta gets up and tells him to break whatever he wants without a care. Mayawol challenges him, saying that if he destroys everything she's created, she'll send him back. Suddenly, the system announces that data from the recycle bin is being restored in front of Yuta. With that, several players begin to appear, and the boy is left confused about what's going on. He's in shock when he sees that these players are his former, deceased companions. With a wicked smile, the woman says that the towers he needs to destroy now are different ones. The scene then shows a world with countless towers, revealing there are still many more to be conquered. Yuta is filled with rage and unleashes a golden aura upon realizing the cruelty of the situation. Immediately after, he charges at Mayawol with his sword in hand. But the woman blocks his attack with no difficulty, using her purple energy. She grabs the sword's blade and calls him trash for trying to attack her with that kind of power. The boy screams in desperation, asking how his dead companions can be there. He remembers how they all risked their lives to climb that pointless tower. Furious, Yuta questions if this was why she brought them to this place. He tries to attack her again, but is thrown back with a simple gesture from the woman. With a look of superiority, Mayawol says they are all just pawns for her world. Moao reveals that the world she created is still unstable and cannot exist without their power. That's why she made them climb the tower with fake quests, just to extract their strength. With that, the woman says she has no more business with someone who no longer has any power, and so she tells the player to disappear from there once and for all, and attacks him. Lying on the ground, Yuta begins to cry, blaming himself for everything that happened to his companions. He bitterly regrets having climbed that stupid tower from the very beginning. The boy laments that if he were stronger or wiser, he could have finished that woman. But suddenly, a hand appears out of nowhere and grabs my owl's face with all its might. Our MC slams her into the ground with a devastating impact that creates a huge crater, completely shocked, not understanding how he managed to move so fast. Faced with the situation, he tells the brat that he's managed to earn his respect again. With a smirk, Guan asks how she dared to lay her hands on his prey first. Yuta is speechless as the man says his courage is admirable, but it's still too soon. He declares that he will be the only one to finish this woman and charges with a powerful punch. The blow lands squarely, creating an energy explosion that destroys everything around. Guan smiles and says that the only one who's going to finish her is him, and no one else. Tomi Wol is impressed by his power, even without the help of a status system. However, she says she won't let that wild power run loose, and attacks him with her energy. Our MC gets annoyed with her dirty tricks and tries to break free from the purple magic. She then traps him in a magic circle and tells him to conquer all the towers. She says she'll be waiting for him at the highest point in this world, and then disappears. With that, our MC is left alone on his knees, surrounded by the woman's purple energy. A memory of the old Mai Wall surfaces, asking him to conquer all the nations of the world. He reflects that no matter how much he thinks about it, the two of them really are very similar. He wonders why she sent him to a place like this as he calls out her name. At that moment, one of the revived knights charges straight at Yuta. The boy manages to block the blow, but the enemy's strength is too much for him now. Yuta screams the names of his old friends, asking if they don't recognize him anymore. His little fairy warns him it's useless, as they are just echoes of old memories. Even knowing this, the boy hesitates to fight against the people who were once his companions. Guan appears and with one punch defeats one of the knights attacking Yuta. The boy is surprised as our MC effortlessly kicks another opponent away. With a serious look, he orders the young man to guide him to the darn towers immediately. Yuta is shocked by the request and tries to argue, saying those people are his friends. Guan scoffs at the idea and asks if those things really look like companions. He states that they are just vengeful spirits of the dead and nothing will change that fact. Given the situation, the man says that if the boy wants to play with ghosts, he'll go alone. In that instant, the knights swarm towards our MC, who turns his back. With swift movements, he dodges and counterattacks all the opponents with no difficulty. The warrior gets irritated with these ghosts, who dare to block their king's path. Because of this, he announces he's busy and will blow them all up at once. Right after, our MC unleashes a devastating technique with a reddish aura. But after the strike, he bends over as if feeling a strange pain in his body. He looks at his hand and realizes he can't feel his energy, wondering if he's been sealed. With a furious smile, he understands that my owl is testing him and feels challenged. Our MC declares that no matter what she does, nothing will be able to stop him here. With one punch, he pierces through several opponents and declares himself the strongest of all time. Facing the horde of enemies, he decides it's time for a little warm-up. And so Guan charges in and starts fighting, sending the ghosts flying. Yuta watches the scene in shock, admitting that this old man is a beast for fighting alone. However, he notices a very important detail that could complicate the whole situation. Even with all his power, the ghost players keep respawning endlessly. Because of this, the boy decides he needs to help somehow, and grabs his holy sword. At that moment, Nova appears and tells Yuta to calm down, as the situation is very dangerous. She warns him that using the holy sword without his stats could make his body unable to handle it. The boy says he knows the risk, but a ghost grabs him and calls him to the darkness. The spirit of his former companion asks him to climb the tower with them again. Faced with the situation, Yuta uses the holy sword's power and attacks the ghost to break free. With a determined look, he states that he needs to act to avenge his friends. And so he says that no matter what happens, he will find the woman behind it all. Yuta yells to get the man's attention as he continues to fight the ghosts. With a confident look, he asks if the warrior can take his attack without dodging. The boy asks him to keep drawing the enemy's aggro, but our MC doesn't understand the slang. Annoyed with the sassy kid, he tells him to shut up and not give him orders on the battlefield. At this, Yuta realizes his plan worked, and all the enemies have focused on the man. so he seizes the chance and leaps over the horde of ghosts with his sword. For an instant, he looks at the faces of his former companions, feeling a tightness in his chest. With tears in his eyes, the young man apologizes to his friends one last time. From that point on, he swears he will avenge them all, no matter the cost. With that, he unleashes the full power of the holy sword, creating a massive magic circle in the sky. The golden energy descends with full force, causing a devastating explosion that annihilates the ghosts. Seeing this, our MC smirks and calls the boy a bold and brazen brat. On his knees, Yuta can barely move, and the man admits that he's pretty useful after all. The panting boy tells him to remember just one very important thing between them. With a determined gaze, he declares that the one who will finish that woman won't be him. With Yuta completely exhausted, our MC picks him up in his arms with no difficulty at all. With a wide grin, he laughs and calls the young man a sassy and insignificant brat. He wonders how the boy dares to give him orders but says he'll reward him for the entertainment. And so, he holds him and promises that if the boy gets stronger, he'll have his chance for revenge. With a confident smile, Guan says he'll be eagerly waiting for that day. From there, the scene changes, and we see a mysterious figure stepping on a sharp rock. This warrior, with a skull helmet and an axe, observes the landscape from a cliff. Suddenly, a strange purple energy begins to emanate from the eye of the skull helmet he's wearing. The scene takes us to an isolated valley with high cliffs and a waterfall in the background. In this place, Guan is sitting under the waterfall, trying to recover his strength. With a focused gaze, our MC continues his training under the flowing water. The force of the waterfall is so intense that even the rocks around him shatter. Despite all this, he realizes that, as expected, he can't feel his inner power. He becomes furious, remembering that Maya Wol dared to seal his dantian, and calls her audacious. Given the situation, he realizes that at this point there's no other choice. Our MC turns and kicks Yuta, asking how long he's going to lie there. Right after, he throws him hard onto the ground, and he slides a few feet in the dirt. Annoyed, Yuta gets up with his sword and calls him a muscle-headed gorilla, showing his claws. The man says the brat still hasn't faced reality, while Yuta challenges him to a second round. Our MC asks if the boy wants to get finished, because he doesn't have time and needs to destroy the towers. With a smirk, Yuta questions the plan and suggests they should find that woman first. Guan gets furious with the boy's slowness and calls him an idiot for not getting it. He explains that the woman is hiding in the towers because this entire world was created by her. With a crazed smile, he says that if he destroys all the towers, he'll be able to track her down. Yuta understands the logic but still wonders why he has to go along with this maniac. The little fairy whispers to Yuta, saying that no matter how you look at it, this guy is dangerous. She reminds him that the man shattered his status window and who knows what else he might do. Our MC overhears the whispering and asks what they're talking about, startling the fairy. He says he doesn't want to travel with them, but the brat's swordsmanship could be a little useful. Besides, Guan reminds him that he's also trying to get the same woman he is. He says that with that fragile body, the young man is too weak to ever defeat her. Because of this, he announces that from now on, he's going to whip them all into shape at once. The scene changes, showing one of the immense towers they need to conquer on their path. Before it, a voice says they have finally reached their destination after much effort. Our MC stares at the structure and thinks that this is one of the towers she created. He turns to Nova and says that in just a few days the girl has grown remarkably. With her body like that, he states she will be at least a little useful to him. Before him, Nova thanks him with a serious look, calling him master for his training. He praises her talent, but the girl says it was all thanks to his teaching. Right after, he asks where that brat is and calls him pathetic for his weakness. In the back, Yuta can barely walk while Nova proudly flexes her new muscles. Leaning on a branch, the boy calls them both lunatics, unable to move. He complains about the training and wonders what in the world happened to his friend Nova, shocked. He sees that her appearance has changed, and now she's a completely different person. With that, the young man collapses to the ground, exhausted, saying he can't take another step. Our MC glares at him and calls him a pathetic brat for barely being able to keep up. He then looks at the tower and says it has a bizarre and grotesque appearance. Given the situation, Nova asks her master if they are going in but sees no entrance. With a smirk, Guan tells his disciple that there's no need for something like an entrance. He states that the only thing they need to do here is smash this darn tower to bits. Excited, Nova praises him, saying that as expected, he's going to blow up the tower with a single strike. Desperate, Yuta tries to stop them and asks them to think a little more before acting, but it was too late. Our MC charges forward and a critical error suddenly appears on the system. He concentrates purple energy in his fist, preparing to destroy the tower with his strength. Because of this, the system announces a forced transfer to the tower's interior. Yuta is also sucked in and screams at the crazy old man for not thinking about the consequences. The scene shifts to a ruined city with destroyed buildings and a dark sky. Right after, a blast of purple energy hits one of the buildings with a huge impact. The three of them fall to the ground and Guan wonders what these creepy buildings are. Disoriented, Yuta gets up, and with the little fairy on his shoulder, he asks where he is. Looking at the ruined buildings, he wonders if this place is even a city. The little fairy questions if they've returned to their original world, leaving Yuta pensive. She then points to several bodies on the ground, and the boy wonders if they are players. He doesn't understand the reason for so many bodies, but is sure this isn't his world. Because of this, the young man wonders where the heck he's ended up this time. Suddenly, purple energy starts to emanate from the bodies as one of them screams in agony. Our MC watches the scene in silence, seeming to understand what's happening. With that, he realizes the souls of the dead are gathering in a single spot in the sky. From there, a mysterious figure in a suit descends from the heavens and finds the situation interesting. The man then looks at them and wonders if they are the new players summoned to the tower. With a look of superiority, he warns them not to even bother resisting. The man continues, saying that the only one who can reach the top of this tower is him. He then raises his hand and begins to channel the purple energy from the souls. Before them, a giant skeleton appears, and the system names it the King of Specters. Yuta is in shock and says that's more than a skeleton, it's on a whole other level. The skeletal creature stares at the group, its purple eyes glowing intensely in the darkness. With that, the monster attacks, and Yuta screams for Guan to get out of the way, as it's too dangerous. Our MC laughs at the situation and asks how a monster like that could possibly be dangerous to him. Without wasting time, he charges with a punch and destroys the skeleton with a single devastating blow. The impact of the attack is so strong that the monster is completely disintegrated in an instant. Seeing the scene, Guan turns with a smirk and calls the creature a useless piece of trash. He glares at the man in the sky and questions him for daring to declare himself the strongest with that kind of power. Annoyed with the enemy's arrogance, our MC calls him a coward for hiding. The mysterious man looks down at him and repeats the question of whether he's really hiding. Right after, several other creatures appear by his side, and he says he's changed his mind. With a challenging look, he states that he's going to test him to see how long he can last. Bizarre monsters leap from the shadows, wanting a piece of that legendary warrior who invaded their territory. At that moment, the protagonist looks on with disdain and wonders if this was really supposed to be a test for someone of his level. With that, he strikes a combat pose and claims that an insignificant being would never have the right to challenge him like this. Then the king slams a creature against the ground while questioning who that guy up there thinks he is to test his strength. Suddenly, a giant skeleton with glowing purple eyes emerges, radiating an aura of pure doom and destruction across the entire area. But despite the monster's absurd size, the master remains, still as magical chains begin to surround the whole place. Suddenly, purple shackles begin to bind his arms, and the fighter is confused, not understanding how that magic works. Soon, a gigantic white beast leaps from behind him, opening its mouth to try a surprise attack right in the middle of the confusion. With that, the immense creature charges, causing total destruction to the floor of that bizarre tower while trying to bite the hero. But the monster's face ends up being hit by sparks of energy as it roars in anger for not getting what it wanted. Then, a colossal hand descends from the heights, but the young man doesn't even flinch, simply watching the strike arrive without showing any fear. Even after being struck, the warrior gives a mocking smile and comments that such a weak attack is only good for tickling him. Then, a new system message warns that a powerful summon is being prepared against the invaders of that floor. Several skeletal soldiers appear out of nowhere, jumping from all sides, to try and surround the group with their high numbers. With this new threat, the magical window announces the arrival of an entire horde coming directly from the depths of the abyss. But before they can touch him, the man stomps hard on the ground, creating a powerful shockwave that makes the entire structure tremble. With this move, all the small enemies are thrown far away by the brute force of our protagonist, who doesn't want to waste any time. At that instant, a giant red ogre appears running and prepares a heavy punch to try and crush everything in its path. However, the master strikes back with a precise punch right in the monster's face, sending the creature flying with just one move. Finally, the system shows the containment specters have appeared to try and trap the fighter's feet and stop him from moving forward. At that moment, the former emperor makes a puzzled face because he can't understand what is happening before him. With that, the villain in the suit claims he can't understand what that guy is while observing the master from afar. Then the enemy comments that he doesn't feel any stats or skills coming from his opponent, and this leaves him quite intrigued. But the protagonist just maintains his serious and cold gaze while analyzing every move of the mysterious and dark adversary. At that moment, the opponent draws two glowing blades that radiate a very sinister and dangerous purple energy to those present. He claims he doesn't need answers because he will simply claim that soul to confirm everything for himself in the end. Then, an explosion of light occurs when a powerful authority is activated right in the middle of the destroyed battlefield. So the villain charges with a move called the Mark of Doom and cuts through the air with impressive speed toward the target. But the young hero ends up being thrown back and lets out a cry of pain while trying to stay conscious in the fight. At that moment, the young man wonders what kind of destructive and absurd power the enemy is using now. He is in shock to see that someone can fight on equal terms against the grumpy old man without any apparent difficulty. With that, the little fairy falls into despair and screams for her companion to run away from there as fast as possible to save himself. Then the little creature warns that this being no longer seems like an ordinary player and that the feeling coming from him is terrifying. At that instant, a female silhouette emerges, wrapped in shadows and purple flames, showing a divine and dark presence in the place. He realizes that the person has the same level of strength as the goddess Eshua, and this completely changes the course of that fight. But the view of the ruined city shows that many terrible battles have already taken place in that forgotten location. Then, the villain walks through the debris, while wondering if that is finally the last soul he needs to harvest today. With that, he moves forward accompanied by gigantic beasts that seem to obey every command of their current master. Then the nameless player reaches out his hand to begin a dark process involving the cruel fate of everyone alive. He activates the soul absorption authority and says he will make great use of all this power accumulated in the battles. Guanhorn leaps through the debris as the tower shakes with the force of the impact caused by the intense combat happening now. With a stern face, the legendary warrior asks if the guy is talking about that awful woman who sealed his energy in the past. On the other side, the man in the suit observes everything calmly and says he was already looking for that specific person, and this makes things easier. With a deadly look, the king demands to know her whereabouts and warns that if the opponent doesn't want to fall, he better speak up soon. At that moment, the adversary lets out an ironic laugh and comments that things wouldn't be resolved in such a simple way for them. With that, several purple blades begin to float around the villain as he warns that he won't be the next one to fall in that place. Then the scene is surrounded by dozens of mystical swords ready to pierce anyone who dares to stand in his way. Without wasting time, the protagonist dodges the magical projectiles with precise and fast movements, showing all his battle experience. Then, the young man catches one of the flying weapons with just fingers and stares at the enemy with a contempt that would terrify anyone. At that instant, the fighter maintains his confident stance while waiting for the next trick from that strange player wearing formal clothes. But the opponent's face changes to an expression of pure shock as he realizes his attacks are having no real effect on the hero. Suddenly, a colossal beam of purple energy explodes in the center of the battlefield, tossing dust and rocks in every direction. Even so, the enemy emerges from the smoke with a smile and claims the master is truly an extraordinary guy for resisting. Then the man in the suit holds his own glowing sword and declares that now he will fight for real to show his true worth. At that moment, a system window appears announcing the activation of the Hades Armor Authority to strengthen the villain's body. With that, the adversary charges at high speed, leaving a trail of purple electricity while attempting a final blow against the master. But the clash between the two creates intense sparks as the forces collide in the middle of the ruins of that city destroyed by time. Then the enemy yells for the protagonist to try and hold back that powerful strike while putting all his fury into the tip of the mystical blade. Suddenly, a massive explosion occurs, throwing everything into the air and making the ground give way under the weight of so much power. But the martial arts master only gives a slight smile and asks if that is all that arrogant kid has to offer. The enemy in the suit charges again, shouting that the fight isn't over yet, while attempting a new, desperate move against the hero. At that moment, he leaps to attack from above, but the Emperor remains still, just watching the opponent's useless effort. With that, the king agrees that it really isn't the end yet and prepares his own response to finish that dull game. Then the legendary warrior points out that there is an abyss of power between them that is impossible to overcome, and prepares for the strike. Suddenly, a colossal explosion of purple light consumes the entire battlefield, leaving a trail of absolute destruction wherever it passes. But the opponent emerges from the smoke, heavily out of breath, while trying to catch his breath after taking that direct and brutal impact. He lets out a sinister laugh and admits the young man is indeed very strong, but says that advantage only lasts for now. At that moment, young Yuta asks if the man knows the goddess Eshua and shows visible concern about the answer that might come. But the master simply remains silent while staring at the villain with a deep look full of mysteries about the future of that tower. Then the adversary reveals that he still hasn't gained total control over the place and needs something more to complete his dark plan. With that, the villain explains the contract made to offer 10,000 player souls to become the true successor of this world. He shouts victoriously, claiming he has finally captured the last essence needed, while holding the little fairy in his hands. Then the boy falls into despair seeing that his friend was captured and lets out a cry of anguish at the terrible situation that has formed. Then the hero charges with rage, asking what that monster did to his companion while attempting an immediate rescue attack. But the successor says the weak shouldn't interfere in his business and orders one of his servants to deal with the intruder without mercy. At that instant, a pale creature attacks the boy from behind, causing a serious injury that leaves him speechless from the pain. With that, the young man struggles and realizes his body is reaching its limit because of that brutal and cowardly strike he received. Then, the villain comments that it's useless to try and block his movements now that he has reached a divine level of strength and authority. Then the boy falls defeated to the ground, while the Master of Souls boasts about being surrounded by an army of the fallen ready for his command. But a system message confirms that the ritual has been completed with the 10,000 soul, and the total unlocking of the tower will begin shortly. The master comments that in his old kingdom, there were worms who use those low-class arts, and he gets irritated by the trash he sees. At that moment, he prepares his hand with a greenish light and warns that he will show how it's done the right way, so the opponent can learn. With that, the king activates the power of the true spiritual arts, and a dense, glowing energy begins to emerge around him with force. Then the essences the villain was controlling begin to be drawn to the legendary warrior's side, without anyone being able to stop it. Suddenly, the adversary in the suit realizes his collected souls are being stolen and is totally shocked by the unexpected situation, but he struggles and says something like, "That shouldn't be possible within the rules of this bizarre system that rules the current world." At that moment, the protagonist orders the young ones to get angry and attack the enemy in the suit with everything they have now. With that, the little fairy girl shows her eyes glowing and prepares to show that it's her turn to shine in front of everyone. Then the boy with the sword looks at the opponent with an immense desire to crush that coward once and for all in the middle of the ruins. But the boy seems confused by the sudden change in his state and shows that he doesn't know what is happening to him at that moment. At that moment, the hero looks at his own hands and asks himself if he really ended up passing away in the middle of all that fighting. Then the young man shouts at the master and demands his body back because he believes the old man was to blame for this strange change. With that, the emperor calls the kid an idiot and warns that the boy would have been gone if he had continued in his previous state without his help. But he explains that the opponent was using a necromancy technique to control their souls, as if they were just puppets. At that moment, the warrior reveals that he separated the essence from the body to allow a gradual and safe recovery for both partners. With that, the king claims he stole the souls under the villain's command, and now that guy is nothing but a powerless nobody in the tower. Then the boy looks at his new powers and comments that he doesn't feel any real change in his physical self, now while observing his hands. At that instant, the master orders the two of them to show the true power of superior necromancy, so the adversary can see who is really in charge there. But the tower's successor walks through the debris and asks if the young man really believes he has lost everything now with that little trick. With that, the villain radiates a terrifying purple aura and tells the protagonist to stop talking nonsense while charging to continue the mortal combat. The villain observes his fallen soldiers and admits he has no idea how the king managed to steal those souls so easily and quickly. But he claims that what was taken is just a drop in the ocean compared to the immense army he still keeps to use in that tower. With that, the successor mocks the group, asking if they really believe that is true necromancy with only two people helping. Then the master lets out a loud laugh because he thinks it's ridiculous that the opponent still tries to measure someone's strength using only pathetic numbers. Then, the boy charges against a pale monster and delivers a glowing strike while ignoring the taunts of the arrogant enemy up there. With this move, the specter is hit full on and begins to shatter from the absurd force the boy now carries in his hands. At that moment, a flash of energy pierces the beast's chest and throws it away in a totally decisive and brutal way in the middle of that fight. But a gigantic trail of light cuts through the tower's sky and destroys everything in its path with an ease that impresses everyone present. With that, the adversary in the suit is totally perplexed and wonders where all that overwhelming force that suddenly appeared is coming from. Then, the opponent remembers that only a few seconds ago, the group was almost defeated, and he doesn't understand how they recovered with such vigor. So the ruined scenery continues to suffer from the shockwaves caused by the powerful attacks being exchanged in the city center. At that instant, more creatures emerge from the shadows with bizarre and ghastly forms, ready to attack anyone still standing in the place. But a colossal skull emerges right behind the little fairy and opens its huge mouth to try and bite the ally in a very dangerous surprise attack. With that, the young hero lets out a desperate cry calling for his friend, and the boy wonders if his companion is still fainted from fear. At that moment, the mystical monster roars with hatred as it moves forward to end the little fairy's life, as she seems totally defenseless in the fight. Then little Nova freezes with white eyes and shows that she is going through a very powerful and frightening internal change. But the little girl's face begins to be overtaken by a black shadow, and an electric aura emerges, showing that her hidden power has finally awakened. With this awakening, A devastating blow hits the giant enemy and causes the creature's body to be crushed with an impact that shakes the entire ground. Then a cloud of dust and rocks rises into the air as the surrounding structure collapses because of the energy released in that epic counter-attack. Then the companion looks at her own hands, not understanding anything, and the group realizes she is confused by what happened to her physical body. Guan Huan watches the little girl in surprise and notes that her power awakened in a bizarre and very sudden way. With that, the boy asks if his companion is okay, but she seems to be in a trance with all that energy coming out of her body. Even feeling they got stronger with this necromancy, the young man comments that fighting so many creatures will never end. Then hundreds of purple specters continue to emerge from the shadows and surround the group with a terrifying bloodlust. Observing the situation, the former king remains silent while thinking of a plan to end this nonsense once and for all. Meanwhile, the villain in the suit fumbles with his blue screen and tries to understand why the system is giving so many errors in a row. Seriously, the master states that to stop this guy, they first need to destroy that disgusting floating window. He explains that his energy center is sealed, which is why he can't use his original internal strength against the adversary. Realizing the logic, the boy notes that even with the seal, the old man still managed to manipulate the souls of the departed perfectly. Then the emperor clenches his fist and says that using external energy is no problem at all for someone experienced like him. With that, the fighter guarantees that with enough essence, he can produce a power equal to his internal vigor from long ago. At that moment, the young man turns to the fairy and orders the little one to offer her soul for him to complete what he has planned now. Suddenly, a danger warning appears on the screen, stating there aren't enough souls to complete the mission requirements. Infuriated, the tower's successor realizes he is wasting the raw material of his quest because of those insolent worms. With hatred in his eyes, the opponent in the suit decides he needs to eliminate all the obstacles that are hindering his final goal. Raising his hand, the villain begins to summon all his dark power to launch a mass attack against the invaders. Then he orders his entire army of the fallen to move forward and sweep away every enemy that dares to stand before him now. Calmly, the master tells the apprentice to trust him and put everything he has into that final move to win the combat. He tells the kid to clear a path through the monsters so he can reach that wretched successor personally. Holding his sword firmly, the boy states he will clear the way, but makes it clear he is doing it only for himself and his friend. The boy charges forward, letting out a battle cry while preparing his most powerful strike to tear through the army of specters in his path. With that, he releases the holy judgment, and a colossal beam of light falls from the heavens, destroying every creature in that direction. But the villain watches everything with boredom, while fiddling with his blue window, and calls the heroes idiots for wasting strength on underlings. Then the successor lets out a dark laugh, warning that such effort isn't even enough to scratch his immense stock of souls. At that moment, the former king emerges from the shadows right behind the enemy, and calls him a coward with a deadly and dark gaze. Very calmly, the master explains that he was just waiting for the right moment to catch this guy distracted by his floating screens. Then the legendary warrior clenches his fist and prepares a devastating external energy technique to shut the adversary's mouth for good. Then he moves forward together with the little fairy in a coordinated movement that promises to end that fight once and for all right there. But the punch hits the magical interface full on, and the successor panics upon seeing his main protection being shattered by the hero. With that, the Azura King's forbidden technique causes a massive explosion that makes the entire tower structure shake violently. At that instant, the panel with level 9 begins to crack, showing that magical numbers are useless against brute force. Soon, the status window explodes into 1,000 pieces, and all the power accumulated by the villain begins to disappear into the air rapidly. Then the man in the suit screams in despair because he can't accept that everything he achieved was destroyed so easily by one blow. With his face overcome by terror, he realizes that without his false statistics, he is nothing more than an ordinary and very fragile human. Then the opponent looks at nothing, trying to find his lost strength, but realizes the game is truly over for him now. At that moment, the system displays error warnings, indicating that the soul data has been corrupted and deleted forever permanently. With that, the succession ritual fails miserably, and the red screen confirms the end of that monster in the suit's dark plans. Then the young hero falls to the ground, feeling the weight of the battle, while trying to catch his breath after so much physical effort. But he notices something strange and wonders if he finally managed to return to his original body in the middle of all that confusion. At that instant, the boy observes his own hands, feeling life return to normal as the dust settles on the destroyed battlefield. At that moment, the boy realizes his body is totally healed, just as the master predicted, and he wonders who this gentleman really is. Then the young man observes the fighter from afar and questions where the real limit of such strength he just witnessed in the tower could be. Then the villain in the suit falls into a deep despair, shouting that he cannot accept defeat while losing control of the situation. With that, the opponent begs for another chance and claims that his final goal could never end in such a humiliating way. But the former king keeps his arms crossed with indifference, while listening to the man in the suit blame everyone else for his total failure. Finally, the enemy reveals with flames in his eyes that he lost the only way to save his world from absolute ruin because of this combat.